And we want to take this opportunity to speak to you about the proposed general fund budget for fiscal year 26. Before I get into the meat of this presentation, I want to begin by reiterating that all the work that we are doing is grounded on our path to excellence. You may recall last year we engaged with all stakeholders, leveraging a design team to identify our strengths as a district or areas of opportunities. And during that process, we were able to bring clarity around our mission, our vision, or core values as an organization. And it was through that process that we identify our 4 priorities for the district, which you can see here. This year, we are now in our first year of implementation. What we are going to do today in the next hour or so is to walk you through, again, what we are proposing for our budget for fiscal year 26. Please know that the goal is to create and implement a budget process that is transparent to all of our stakeholders. Please know that all of this work is meant to support the instructional core, because at the end of the day, that we are in the business of learning, and instruction and learning has to be at the core of our work. We are aiming to ensure that we can get at a balanced budget. This budget that you're going to see presented to you reflects the true cost of operating the entire district. So not just our schools, but the entire district. Again, it is grounded on our path to excellence, which is our strategic operating plan, and it aims to direct our resources to the classroom learning environment. And of course, we need to make sure that everyone, or district personnel, or partners, everyone is aware of the proposal in our budget, and that they can join us to become advocates for fair funding for students, because they deserve that. Before I go on, I want to give you a look here at a glance. When I speak about our students, when I speak about our district, these are the students who we are servicing. Again, this is the unofficial enrollment data that we had at the beginning of the year. We are servicing close to 19,000 students in 41 facilities across the district. Here you see the different levels, as well as the demographics of our district. But if you pay close attention to that last row, it highlights the level of need. Here you see that 24.1 of our students are multilingual learners. 16.3 of our students have been identified as students with disabilities. We celebrate the fact that we have linguistic diversity in our district, and here you can see we have 78 different languages spoken. And there is need, because many of our students are living in poverty, and that 75.5% illustrates for you the number of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and also highlighting for you the number of families and students that are dealing with housing insecurity. So there you see our percentage of homelessness. Again, just wanted to reiterate, who are the students in the New Haven Public Schools. Next, I want to give you a snapshot of the learning experiences that we are proud to be able to provide for all over 19,000 students. Let me start first with core academics. You heard me say we are in the business of education, and we start everything by honing in on our core academics. That means, how is it that we are teaching literacy, right? Reading, language arts. How are we teaching math, science, STEM, social studies, world languages, also performing and visual arts, um, physical education, health. Uh, all of these pieces make up what we call our core academics. This is basically all of our full-time staff that we have available in our district to carry out the standards in all of these core areas to ensure that our students are receiving the academics that they need in every grade level. And here, for example, I've given you an inside view into how many full-time employees we currently have, for example, teaching performing and visual arts, um, as well as the part-time staff and the many partners that we bring into this work, because often we're not able to do it by ourselves, but we are grateful for the many partners that support the work that we do in our schools. So here, for example, as it relates to health and physical education, you see that the budget currently supports 77 certified teachers in that area, as well as 4 Project Right Teachers. That is a program embedded inside of physical education, as well as 11 certified health teachers. Again, just to give you a quick view into core academics. We also know that because of the diversity that you saw in the profile of our students, that we have many of our students who are multilingual learners and many of our students who are in need of special education. That is why we are very proud that we are able to deliver on integrated instructional models to support the needs of our special education students, but also our multilingual learner. So we have a full continuum that it's available for both special education as well as bilingual education. So here, again, in this row, I have shared with you some of what that program looks like inside of our bilingual education continuum, as well as our special education continuum. Again, something that we're very proud of because it means that we are meeting the needs of our students. But we also know that we not only have to attend to the academic needs of children, we teach to the whole child. So we also have to think about what supports are needed, because not every child learns at the same pace, right? Think back to your children. How many of them were able to recognize letters and sounds by the time they were 4 or they were 5? Maybe it took them a little longer. Same thing happens with all the content that we're trying to teach. And that is why we also ensure that our programming accounts for what we call interventions for kids who are behind grade level, but also for enrichment supports for kids who are at or above. So here you see things that we do in that area as it relates to academic and behavior. So you are seeing things like our Read 180 tutors and teachers to address literacy, and iReady and tutors that we have supporting mathematics. And then on the behavioral side, that is where we have staffing such as youth coordinators. We also tend again to the social and emotional supports the students need throughout their development. And we also invest in support staff. So for example, right now, the budget that we are operating under is able to fund a total of 48 school counselors, 27 school psychologists, 57 school social workers. And because we don't have enough, we also put out contracts where we are able to bring speech and language pathologists and psychologists to support the work that we are doing with our certified staff inside of the New Haven Public Schools. On the behavioral side, we also are able to fund a restorative coach that supports the individual schools in putting together their PBIS programs. For example, they work on supports towards restorative justice and those types of programming. In addition to school community care coordinators and school-based health centers that we're able to have throughout the district, as well as family resource centers. Again, just a view into what is funded inside of our budgets. You also know that there's a lot of work that we have been doing, and we have been deepening that work related to college and career pathways, because we are servicing our students from the moment they walk in kindergarten and in pre-K, and the work that they do with us all the way to 12th grade. But the work is about ensuring that they are ready for when they leave us. And we want to make sure that kids are prepared to be successful, whether they go straight into college, whether they go straight into a 2-year program or a 4-year program, or where they go straight into work or the military. So there are pathways that we have been able to develop inside of our high schools. It includes advanced coursework, for example, where while in high school, students can get college credit. We also have we have a total of 6 pathways that we are very proud of. For example, you may recall last year, we did the ribbon cutting for the BioCity pathways, where students get to go into a building and they are conducting research along with researchers who are here in New Haven. We also have our business pathway, or culinary pathway. I know many of you know Chef Bradshaw over at Wilbur Cross. That is a program that continues to be a nationally renowned program for our students. And they keep continuing to win competition year after year. We also have an education pathway because we know there are shortages in our field, and we are investing in growing our own teachers, meaning who best to teach our children in the future than our own students who are here with us today. We also have a pathway in health careers, many partnerships that we currently have, for example, with Yale Hospital, Southern Connecticut State University, and a variety of different universities that support this work. And last year also, we opened up a manufacturing pathway, and pretty soon next month, we're actually going to have a ribbon cutting to share the beautiful manufacturing lab that we have opened up at Hill House that supports students in the pathway from Hill House, Career, and Wilbur Cross. All of these pathways are designed so while students are with us, they earn not only high school credit, but they can also earn industry certification. Again, making it quicker for them to go into high-paying jobs in the future. And we also provide opportunities for internships. We're very proud of our athletic program. As you know, year after year, we continue to have many of our athletes who win different conferences, such as the Southern Connecticut Conference. And again, in that area, we have not only our certified staff working during the day, delivering physical education programming, but we also have coaches that support, again, the athletic program that primarily exists in our high school, even though we also do provide some middle school programming. Not as extensive as the high school, but we're proud that with limited funds, we have been able to continue to do that work. And here in this chart, you can see the different athletic programs that we have. We, as you know, we have also been addressing student attendance and chronic absenteeism. That those are percentages that skyrocketed, right, during the pandemic and after the pandemic. And we are still, like many urban environments, continuing that work. So please know that the budget also supports work that is happening in that area, such as our youth coordinators, dropout prevention specialists, mentoring programs. These are the folks that are out there working with families, knocking on doors, doing visits, working with our attendance teams. And last but not least, we are in education. And we have to continue to be at our best as it relates to knowing the best strategies that are out there to do our work. And we are never done learning. And that is why there is investment that happens throughout the entire district so that everyone can access professional learning so that, again, we can be at our best when it comes to servicing our students in instruction, but also in all areas because we are tending, as I mentioned before, to the whole child. And in addition to that, that we also have to have the best training to ensure that we are being effective and efficient in running a multi-million-dollar organization, which we are. And with that, Dr. White, we can go to this slide. But today, as you heard, we're going to talk about budget. And I wanted to frame the conversation around the fact that you need to know that for many, many, many years, the district has been underfunded. It has been underfunded in terms of the total cost of what it takes to educate children and to be able to provide the promise of a public education. And I just gave you again a glimpse of what we have been able to do even with limited resources. And please know that in the last 3 years, a lot of the work that was carried out was being funded with the federal dollars that came in during the pandemic. So what is called the ESSER money that you often hear us speak about. So these were all the work that was able to happen because we had millions of dollars that came in into the district for the last 3 years. But I cannot reiterate enough that a lot of the work has been happening and we have been able to maintain it because we had that money. As you know, that money's gone. That money, that grant ended this year. So next year, we basically start with our regular sources of revenue. In the next slide, I want to show you a chart that illustrates for you all of the different towns that make up what we call the New Haven County. And I wanted to share with you what does it look like in terms of the amount of money that are being spent per pupil or per student, and how we compare when we look at our surrounding towns. Please know that this data is data that comes from the Bureau of Fiscal Services up at the Connecticut State Department of Education, but this data goes to academic year 23-24. And you see that in 23-24, we were right here in the middle of the pack in terms of how much money do we spend per pupil. So again, it does not compare to a place like Milford. It does not compare to a place like Brantford. It does not compare to a dear neighbor of ours, Hamden. If we had the kind of money to spend, even like a Hamden, there'd be a lot of more millions of dollars that we could use to do more of the work that we are doing now. But again, I wanted to give you a comparison of the New Haven County. In the next slide, I also want to show you, continuing with a comparison of how do we fare out, even when we look at the other urban environments. So we are here, right? New Haven, big city, followed by Bridgeport, another big city, urban environment. I'm going to skip over to my friends over in Hartford, and I'm going to go over to our friends in Waterbury. So you see here 4 major cities. Here you can see the blue represents the local contributions. And when you look at these 4 districts, I'm very proud to say, look at how New Haven, in terms of local, has been doing their share in contributing, right, when we compare ourselves to the other larger cities. Look at in the orange, the money that comes from the State Department. That is the orange. And look in the gray, the money that comes from the feds. But now take a look at how that compares to places like Greenwich, places again like Hamden, and places again like Westport. All to say, right, we are all trying to realize the promise of public education for our children, but I need you to understand where it is that we find ourselves as it relates to our financial resources. This data reflects data from academic year 22-23, because it is the one that was available for all of these districts that we wanted to show you a comparison of. In the next slide, I also want to remind you of work that was done by the district back in March of 2023. At that time, the district did what is called an equity gap analysis. They looked at every position. They looked at national standards of how many of that position are recommended depending on enrollment or caseloads. During that analysis, this is the needs that were identified, and earlier this month in our F&O committee, we actually presented an update to say, have we made any gains? Have we been able to close that gap by hiring more of the needs that we have? And I am here to tell you that not much. The difference now is not much. The need, again, you see how many positions are needed. If we were to be very honest with the recommendations based on national associations, but we are looking basically short $38 million if we were just going to fund all of those positions. And I'm only speaking salaries. That doesn't even account for benefits. But again, to continue to reiterate the severity of the level of underfunding that New Haven Public Schools has experienced. In the next slide, I've provided for you a list of our schools. Here you see the different grants that currently support to fund the resources that are allocated in these schools. So for example, if I were to go over to Troop Magnet Schools, you see the percentage of multilingual learners, and you see that right now we are receiving Title I funds to support Troop. We also receive Commissioners Network funding to support Troop. And we also have Title I SIG, which is the School Improvement Grant. So those are the different grants that support Troop. So it is not just the local dollars that are supporting the schools. It is also all of these different grants that are going to support the programming that we currently have in these schools. In the next slide, I also want to show you where we have been as it relates to enrollment. And the reason I am lifting enrollment is that enrollment has a lot to do with the way that public schools are funded. A lot of the funding is grounded in enrollment. And please know that as a district, right, we have seen a decline in enrollment dating back to 2017. So again, I just want to put all these pieces into context. Next, you just heard me speak about enrollment. I now want to talk to you a little bit about the educational cost sharing formula. I'm sure you're hearing it a lot. There's been a lot of talk about ECS, lots of different things happening up at the Capitol. You probably see a lot of news segments lately speaking about ECS because we're all have been advocating around this formula. What I want to share with you, for those of you that are not familiar with ECS, is that this is the formula that it is used in our state to distribute the monies that are allocated to education to local and regional public schools district. So out of the pot of money that the state has dedicated to education, the billions of dollars, they use a formula that was adopted years ago by the legislature, and that it determines how much money do we get, how much money does Hamden get, How much money will North Haven get? How much money will Greenwich get? Every single town, city, right, funding starts with this formula that the state uses. Please note that the formula starts with what they call a foundation amount. So of the start, for every student that we have, we automatically get $11,525. That is the current allocation right now that has been determined. That amount, in essence, is supposed to represent the amount of money that it takes to educate a child. That amount has not changed in many, many, many years. You and I know that the cost of living has changed. You and I know that when we go to the store, if you're like me that picks up a gallon of milk and I'm paying about $5.60 for a gallon of milk, I remember the day when I was paying a little under $3. If we're to look about a few months ago, just think about how much money you're paying right now for eggs. But this formula has not changed in many, many, many years. So what we're saying is that despite the years that have gone by, despite the complexities of the need, $11,525 is what it takes to educate a child. Okay, so that's the foundation. There are also weights that are built into that foundation. So for example, if I am a student, but I am a student and and my parents happen to live in poverty, because I'm living in poverty as a student, the district is going to get a little more than $11,525. If I am also a student, that I am a multilingual learner, because it requires more resources to be able to get students to acquire English and learn academics, like it did for me when I was 10 years old, right? It means that there's going to be an additional amount of money that the district is going to receive, because I'm a student, that I'm a multilingual learner, and I am also a student that I'm living in poverty. And if the district also has a concentrated poverty level, meaning when they put the whole district together, there's a whole formula to determine that. If it's determined that there's a high concentrated level of poverty, there'll be an additional amount of money that will be added to that 11,525. So that is how that amount of money, right, whatever that amount is per kid, the math is done, and then that allocation is given to the city or the town in this ECS grant. Okay? What we get, what the city gets in that grant, then is impacted by all of these pieces that I jotted down for you on this slide. There are a lot of things that impact what exactly is going to be the total amount. But again, I wanted you to know, number one, that I am proud of the programming that we have been able to offer our kids, the wealth of opportunities that we're able to offer them in terms of their learning experience, the way that we are continuing to do our best to make the promise of public education a reality for every kid, and being able to do that within decades of underfunding. And I wanted you to understand how it is that we are funded. With that, And I'm hoping I did a good job explaining that for you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our CFO, Ms. Hannons, and she's going to walk us. What is it that we are proposing that we need in terms of our budget for next academic year? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Hannons.
Thanks, you're still muted.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Negron pointed out, his historical data and how we get our funding, I'm going to basically go in and talk about our current status. And so I'm going to start with our ES funding, which he eloquently explained how it comes about. And if you look at this slide here, we've been funded at 142.5 for the last quite a few years, back to 2000 and I'd say 2021. And any new funds that we receive from the state have to go into the Alliance District grant. However, we cannot use those funds to take care of any deficits. We have to put new programs in our application, and we also have to identify what those new applications are and how they fit into the grant that we have been provided. Next slide, please. And so here, this slide here just shows the change in the grant fund. So as you can see, during COVID, we went up to over $200 million, 200.3. And those grants were basically for 5 years, and they have now expired as of September of 24. So now we're basically just paying any bills that we incurred for this fiscal year, but there are no new dollars coming in. So I want you to really take a look at 21-22, and then took a look at 25-26 estimated, and you could see 24-25. There's a big difference. Over $1 million was no longer available. However, we were still able to provide the services based on the programs with nothing new coming in. So now for next year, we're expecting 84.7, and that's just an estimate based on what we have at the time of this presentation. It may change, but we're not really looking at any significant increases in the dollars at this time. Next slide. Okay, so here what we've done is, this is the grant section, and this is important because we showed you how the grants were decreasing. We wanted to also show you what grants were going away, where we had the dollars that we no longer have. So if you look at it, programs like Youth Prevention Services, where we had $50,000, that is no longer. If you go down to the bottom, we had some state miscellaneous education grants. Those were one-time grants, and we're not expecting any new significant grants coming in. Also, if you take another look at where the youth jobs for youth, we haven't had that in a while, but we keep that, hoping one day that those programs will be restored. And then if you look at all of the ESSER dollars, if you look at the first column versus the second column, and as you can see, there is no more projected revenue coming in for ARP ESSER, ARP 1, ARP 2, or any of the other programs. So you can see where we were at 144 at 23-24, and we're down to 107 right now. We're going down again to 84.7. And this slide is important as well because it shows you basically where all of the funds are coming from to support the wonderful, robust programs that Dr. Negron mentioned in her earlier talk. Next slide. Okay, this here is just a visual to show you in 24, 25, and I think it's important to see visually how the grants piece of the pie is really reducing, where we're only getting like 48.9 from the private, that should be fed. Oh, I'm sorry, from the state grants, and then we have 56.3 for the federal grants. And as you can see, that the yellow piece of the pie is getting bigger and bigger, and that would come from local dollars or other sources of funding, but it's no longer grant funded. So while in previous slides we were showing maybe 50%, that this has really decreased and continues to decrease. We were heavily relying on grants, and we want to say thank you to everyone that provided us funding. But now the trend is changing, where we can no longer rely on grants to cover our just day-to-day costs. So with that, this was our initial projection that we took to our F&O committee for 25-26. And what this shows was what we had 24-25. We asked for 220. We got approved at 208. So we walked in the door with basically a difference of $11.8 million. That difference doesn't go away. It just compounds over time. And I think that's important to know that. So what we did was we presented the budget for 24-25 using the 208 to start, and the budget requested, if we didn't do anything and just kept status quo, we would have been asking for a 8.14% increase with the difference of $16.9 million. Well, we know in real life that you can't leave a budget stagnant and things go up. So with that, what we did, we said, okay, fine, let's put everything in the budget that we know. Let's show the whole picture, the true picture, and that the difference was 23.2 with an 11.15% increase. And while we know that's high, we need to put it out there to show this is what we need to operate, keeping in mind that we no longer have ESSER funds. We no longer have a pot that we could try to reprogram with. And this is where we're left with. Next slide. The slide here is basically the revenue assumptions, and what it shows again was the education cost share at the 142.09, which again is stagnant across the board. That basically doesn't change at all. And then with the Alliance grant, any additional funding that comes in to the Alliance grant is automatically added to the Alliance grant. So that's why you see an increase there. The local contributions, the 82.7, is the difference of what we need after we apply all of these other grants. This is not necessarily local tax dollars, but these are all the other funding sources that we need to look at to try to build up to the budget that we're looking at. With the interdistrict grant, we were this year we're at 36.8. We haven't gotten the final numbers yet, so we're projecting the same for this year. Now, this is the interdistrict grants, and these are the funds that they give us based on the criteria of the grant and the number of students that are coming in that are suburban. And those dollars are in there as well. Then we have the tuition billing. With the tuition billing, we're finding that when we try to put new strategies in, we still don't get enough funds to fully support our special ed because of the students and their various needs that we have to pay for, the in and outs for tuition. So that number, basically, we were looking at to say, okay, what are the other towns going up, and where we think we can be next year. So this is just a number in time. And so we highlighted where it says, so there'll be no misunderstanding, with the local contribution, it highlights the fact that this number is not actual local taxes, but shows the difference between ECS and our proposed budget. So that number is, I just wanted to highlight that's where that number is. It's not necessarily local tax, but it's a factor of different things and then funds that we would need to receive. So here's our proposed budget for 25-26. And as you can see, it shows you the approved budget and then the request of actual costs plus all vacancies, because we know we have to put teachers in front of our students and there's just so much we have to do. So everything is out here now and we're showing you what the budget would actually look like. I want to highlight though that when you see the 25 approved budget, it was coming in at 208.26. What happens is that why someone would say, okay, fine, why don't you budget fully for like say custodial or what have you. Well, what happens is that when we put the budget together, you only get so much funds. Like in a typical example would be where we asked for I think we asked for a number higher than 208, but we ended up with 208. Now we know our costs are more than a 208, but we can only put a budget together on the system that would equal what we were entitled to and what we received with the general funds. So while someone would look at it and say, "Oh, well, gee, this line is under budgeted," yes, because like you say, if you have once you have your dollars, your first thing you do is you support your staff, and then you go in and you put in all your fixed costs, and then whatever is left would go to the other line item. So that's important to understand. So for 26, we're showing here that we need 231 and the increase right now is 23,231. Now we know we have to work on that because we know we're not going to most likely not reach that number, but we're showing you where our starting point is and what we're projecting. And here is the just another visual to show you where the bulk of our staff is being paid, and they're in full-time personnel is 58% of our budget. The next line is operation of plant. Transportation is a large number, and then we have the instruction, and then our part-time personnel. So as we work on these things, we always have to start reducing. Okay, fine. Once we start with our full timers, then we have to start with all our other fixed costs, and then the balances get distributed across the board as needed and based on historical data, but knowing that none of these lines are fully funded to their full potential. Next slide. And here what we've done is so that you can understand the budget that was before you now. What we did was we put our categories, because we categorize a lot of things. What we did here, we just basically gave you a description of the categories to show you what's in that line and what's in that line. So if you look at substitutes, what's in that line? Well, it's only substitutes. Over time, we talk about security, custodial, and other costs like longevity or unemployment. All of those are budgeted underneath those lines. When we get to tuition, you'll see this special ed tuition and tuition going in and out. Utilities will show you there what makes up the utilities line, and the same with transportation and other contractor services. We show you what are in those lines. Next slide. Our notable cost drivers. And this basically just talks about our biggest cost to the budget, which of course are always our full-time personnel, our out-of-district tuition, and transportation. Those are the cost drivers that really just eat up the budget and don't leave you any room for anything else. And then we're just talking about here the difference in the four largest bargaining units and how they affect the budgets. And those are based on contracts. All other salaries are to be negotiated. So we still have a few contracts that have not been negotiated yet. Our transportation contract renewal, our anticipated increase was a 2%. And then we have price escalation with our long-term agreements and our contracts, like our building maintenance and tuition. Again, we have our escalating special education costs, and then we had our charter school. We have to give them their annual allotment based on what the agreement says. Let's see. Okay, then we talk about our current and outgoing mitigations efforts, and these are some of the things that we've done last year and this year. If you could go back to to mitigate to mitigate our budgets in some fashion. So while we did have great results, there's only so much that you can mitigate if you already started out of the gate not having enough budgeted in that line. So we talked about we talk about ARP ESSER and what we've had to do since then. But ARP ESSER really helped us with our building uses and overtime costs. Um, we did a lot of summer programming there. So these are all the things that are going to be now affected by not having those ESSER dollars, which we thank the government and all that participated, to take us to that level. And we did, we really, when we looked at ARP ESSER, we looked at what we really needed to spend those funds, knowing that they were not going to be forever, and it was just a time frame. We also looked at consolidation of bus routes. However, you have to pay attention to the contract. So if the contract says that you're contracting so many buses at such and such amount, then you can't really change that contract that much. While you can look at doing new things, we try to make sure that the routes basically are what we need, and that's a team effort. Next slide. Our budget timeline. So these are basically the steps for our budget timeline, and right now we're at the next slide, please. We've highlighted where we are now. The highlight didn't show, but we highlighted what we need now. So we're basically at the community forum on the budget, which is March 11, 2025. We want to make sure that we send, that you are aware of these dates so you can support us in our plan for going forward with the budget, and to just, come out and show your support for what we're trying to do. Okay, what we don't know so far is the effect of uncertainty in Washington on our current and future funding, the effect of declining enrollment, what we would have on grants, the cost due to unfunded mandates. We also don't know whether there will be increased costs for healthcare and other benefits, the impact of inflation on goods and services, which if we're watching TV every day, and then like eggs, I think I paid $13.99 for the eggs, and I drove too far to turn around and take them back. But believe me, I wanted to take them back. And the increasing cost of special education services and outplacements. Next slide. And here I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Negron to take us to a close.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Can you mute yours? Okay. Can you put down your volume? Just gonna make sure you don't get an echo. Oh, can you hear me okay, Dr. White? Okay. So as you heard, right, you saw the budget, you saw the staffing gaps that we have. I highlighted staffing such as the librarians, right, that we still need 13 of them, as you saw on slide 9, along with other positions. And you saw how it is that our funding comes in. And in that longitudinal data that we share with you, you saw that a lot came in through the ESSER funding, which we no longer have. I am being very upfront and transparent throughout this budget process. Last year, we engaged in some right sizing, which allowed us to make the decision if seats were available, we combined classrooms. We were able to avoid avoid more cuts than what we needed last year. You may remember that we had a $5 million increase allocation from our alders, which we were very grateful for. But again, you have seen now the scope of what it is, the true cost of operating the district. So in this budget, we need $23 million in addition to what we get, which we know is going to be extremely, extremely difficult. That means that I am already going through the process of looking once again to see if there's any right-sizing opportunity as it relates to our high schools, for example, because a lot of that right-sizing last year happened at the elementary level. But I am going through every roster, every position, every opportunity, even going back to possible school mergers, thinking about opportunities for the future, because I have to think about now, the present, short term, but I also have to think about how can we get ourselves out of this hole to have a brighter future as it relates to our financial opportunities. So you're going to hear more and more coming from me, but I want to be upfront. Last year, all of that mitigation, luckily, right, and the support from the city made it possible for us to avoid layoffs. And I'm very proud that we were able to do that. Knowing the scope of things right now, 23 million, and we've all seen already the proposed budget from the mayor, which again, we are grateful that he continues to prioritize education. But the reality is that's a big gap. I believe that layoffs are going to be in the horizon for us because we have to close the gap. I have no interest in ending the year in the red. For many years, we end in the red, and luckily, the city has supported us and has helped us. But again, we have to become very wise in terms of our financial resources. I have, again, no interest in ending in the red. We need to end in the black. And we also need to be able to put forth a balanced budget that will continue to prioritize the programming that we bring to our children. Even if it means that we have to cut a little bit on where we are to ensure that at least we have solid programming for our children and that it becomes equitable because we have 41 schools. We still have to run departments because schools don't run by themselves. Okay? So all of that work is ahead of us. But again, I wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that we could bring this presentation over to you in the event that you haven't been listening in to our Board of Education meetings or finance and operations meetings, or even some of the presentations that we have made to the Board of Alders. With that, I am going to pause and I'm going to ask Dr. White, who has been helping us today with the technology. Dr. White, I don't know if there were any pointed questions that maybe came through the chat that either Ms. Hannons or I could address while we have this opportunity.
Okay. Um, There was a question about curriculum, but that's separate for now. Kim Rogers, it's a very long post here.
That might have been the one that I quickly glanced at that
Yes,
spoke about the librarians.
yes.
That's why I wanted to highlight that that was included on our slide with these staffing needs. The fact again that we still have a gap of 13. So I just wanted to highlight that was included in the chart. Because we do believe that librarian and media specialists play a key role as it relates to our student learning, particularly right when we speak about literacy in other areas as well.
There's a question about the differentiation in salaries, personnel costs for admins, instructional staff, and where that data could be found if we don't have it.
So again, as you might have heard Ms. Hannons mention, right now, all of those, we are bound by the contracts that have been negotiated. And that is where those estimates come from, right? When we consider our current staffing increases that are already there, part of contracts that were signed before, that are still in play, as well as our vacancies. And for the vacancies, we tend to use like an average number to be able to figure that out.
Okay, there was a question about the charter schools. I'll answer. We only have one charter school that is part of New Haven Public Schools, and that's Elm City Montessori School. All other charter schools are technically their own districts, separate from us and are funded directly by the state. They have their own board of directors, their own boards of education, and are not part of the New Haven Public School District, though the kids reside in New Haven, and a few of those schools are located in New Haven. And there's a question with the current vacancies, especially paras, potential lawyers, eliminating vacant positions and laying off existing staff. So I guess asking, would it be a combination of the two?
So again, I don't want to make a blanket statement. Another easy way would be to say, hey, all vacancies are gone. We can't say that because I know, for example, there's still an art teacher that may be needed at a school. We're going to continue to look for that art teacher. If we need a science teacher, we're going to continue to look for that science teacher. You all know I'm going to use my office. I have been working for months without my chief operating officer, right? I'm going to continue to look for my chief operating officer. You all know, for example, Ms. Hannons, who has dedicated years to us. She announced her retirement early on. That doesn't mean that because we're in a budget crunch, that I'm not going to be looking for the next CFO. So there's still positions that are vacant and will become vacant that we need to fill. What we are doing is looking program by program to see, is there an opportunity to combine, stretch, and in other cases it may be, hey, that was like a nice thing to have. And it might be like we can no longer afford that nice thing to have. For example, one of those that we know we can speak of, summer learning. We are very proud of what we were able to do last summer. This summer, that programming is going to be a lot less because we don't have the funds. So we're going to be looking at everything individually. The first filter I guess I will use is I'm going to prioritize that we're still able to deliver the promise of public education to all of our students.
And there's a follow-up question about, the question was what was spending on principal, on admin versus teacher salaries. And I believe that was in the slide deck.
That was slide. Just the budget slide, Linda, that has that Dr. White, that's on slide like 23. So
Okay.
for example, the total the total allocation in this current year for administration and management, 18, 18, 18.9, and for teachers, 81.4. And when we look at our vacancies, right, the projection for next year, we need 88.6 in that line for the teacher salary, and we need 19.9 in the administrator management salary, and we need a 5.4 in the para educator salary.
And the final question was about the contract, which is the power contract.
Para contract, I cannot speak to that. That is a contract that is still in arbitration. Once that is, we receive an answer, we will have to make sure that whatever the arbitrator decide, that that gets accounted in this particular slide.
Will there be any impact to the realization of the teachers' diversity goals?
I can say that we're going to continue to do our work. That's the best way that I can frame that. I'm very proud of our path to excellence. In our path to excellence, again, we know that we are here and we are very proud of the fact that we are a diverse district, diversity as it relates to in various areas, right? Cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, ethnic diversity, even in terms of socioeconomic diversity, right? We are still who we are. We're going to continue to be who we are. We're not going to change who we are because we're proud of who we are as the New Haven Public Schools.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Negron.
Is that everything, Dr. White?
Yes.
Well, for those of you who chose to join during this beautiful afternoon, I do thank you for giving us the time to understand a little more about our programming in the New Haven Public Schools and to understand some of our challenges related to funding. But I am sure that together, as you've heard me say since my arrival, together we are going to continue to strive towards that high level of excellence that we know every single one of our children deserves. So again, thank you for your time.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.